out. Amanda was right there for some of the speech and has been talking to some of the people in the audience who have been directly affected. Amanda, I know it's early to get their gauge on the speech, but you could probably read them at least a little bit during the process.
You can. Lots of applause just at random times, a lot of smiles here, and also a lot of tears from people who are very emotional, because I think what this event did today for so many people who have been labeled junkies over the years is really humanize that. And the president said we need to replace the word junkie with father, son, mother, daughter. These are people who are in our lives. These are people who we love and that we need to help now. He talked about the fact that we cannot fight this problem without reducing the stigma, but also another concern out there that so many people have is access to treatment. And we hear that time and again when we're doing these stories about treatment and access to mental health care. That's something the president talked about. Also, he said rather than prison, we need to treat these people as the way they need to be treated. For instance, I talked to someone the other day who said you wouldn't deny a diabetic insulin if they needed it. Same goes for Narcan. According to the president, the Narcan drug is something that you use to treat somebody who is sick. And that's another thing, Tim, that we heard time and again in this speech today, is that this is an illness. This is not somebody who is morally inept. These are humans, fathers, mothers, brothers, daughters, aunts, uncles, grandparents. We hear that all the time about people who are just struggling to get through life, but they are ill with the disease. Interestingly enough, a very positive moment there when it came to the Handle with Care program. That's a program that we've been covering now for several months. That's the program that allows members of law enforcement to say, hey, this child needs a little extra TLC at school today because mom, dad, whatever, whoever is dealing with a problem. And the children that I talked to from Wyoming County are two shining examples of kids who have to persevere through some of the most difficult circumstances. These are children. In one case, you heard the young boy, Kerry, who's 14, say he lost both his mother and his father to prescription drug abuse, but they're still alive. It's a fight that he deals with each and every day. Now, those students from Wyoming County will be meeting with Senator Manchin and likely the president here shortly, but you can see Senator Manchin still in the crowd, Tim. But also interesting to hear from the secretary himself, Mr. Barticelli, who also was an addict, somebody who has been in the shoes of these people, someone that people look to now and respect at the national level. He knows exactly what they're feeling, Tim.
Yeah, and the man who introduced the president, from Wheeling, he's a resident of Wheeling, he said, he was quoted as saying, treatment is effective and recovery does happen. When he said those words, I actually took the time to reach over and write that down because it sounded like something that somebody obviously who has been through that, and family members, not just somebody who's been through that. And that's the whole thing. This does affect so many families. We keep saying that over and over again. We hear from the children. We hear from the parents. We hear from the family members.
Right.
We hear from the addicts. It is something that does not just affect the addict, but it affects the whole family. And Chief Brent Webster talked about that, Amanda, talking about that we are in a community of zombies, and sometimes our police officers are asked by these addicts to help them. They're actually reaching out for help. He sure did.
Hey, Tim, I'm going to interrupt you real fast. Mayor Danny Jones is right here. Danny, we're live on the air right now, but you know, Danny Jones is somebody whose son has publicly struggled with addiction. Danny, we know that your son has struggled with addiction. As a parent sitting in this audience, not just a City of Charleston official, what were your thoughts?
Oh, I thought it was incredible. And of course, I rode down the limousine with him and talked to him about it, and he gets it. It's going to be a tough hill to climb, but I think this was a great meeting with some great things said, and the president could have picked anywhere to come. He picked here, and I'm grateful for that.
You're the mayor, but you're also a parent, and the president said a child is like having your heart walking outside your body. What did that do to your heart when you heard that?
And I've got two more, and on the way down, we talked about my oldest son, and so it's he defined it better than I've ever defined it.
Mayor, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. I also want to bring in Stephanie, who we talked to earlier. Stephanie has been sober now for 2 years. You just had the chance to hear from the president. What did you hear from the president today that you wish you could have heard when you were suffering from drug addiction?
When I was in my active addiction, I didn't know where to get help. I knew I needed help. I wanted help. I just didn't know how to get it. So to be able to have more treatment centers and more places where we can go get help and reach out to, that would be a tremendous thing for this area.
When we look at you, you don't look like someone that we might stigmatize as a junkie, that people might put that label on. Tell me what it feels like to have that stigma and to hear someone say, we cannot fight this until we break this stigma down.
I mean, I had the normal childhood growing up. I had everything I could have ever wanted. I played sports. I did everything. And then, you know, one day I was at a party and I tried it. And why not? You know, it was the cool thing to do. And then one day I couldn't stop and it got really bad. To look at me, most people don't think I'm an addict or I'm in recovery, but you know, it affects everybody. I know doctors, lawyers, anybody can be affected by addiction.
And so today you take away what from this?
Hope for the other addicts that are still sick and suffering. Hopefully that we can get this under control in the area.
Ashley, thank you, Stephanie, thank you so much for talking with us. I appreciate it. Senate Minority Leader Jeff Kessler is also here today, and his son is someone who we've heard about in the news who's dealt with addiction. You're a father hearing this message from the president, but you're also the Senate Minority Leader. What was going through your mind?
Well, I think it was important to have that discussion and have it publicly. You know, when my son was arrested last December, it was probably the worst day in my life, but it may have been the best in his because it turned it around, and I'm happy.
You told me he's been sober for 9 months yesterday. As a dad, you've got to be proud. How are you hopeful now after hearing this?
Well, you know, obviously it requires treatment and resources, and as the president and others mentioned, it is the fact that he was able to get into an appropriate drug court and treatment programs that aren't readily available throughout the state. And, you know, that's my message, and actually that's my goal. And one of the reasons I'm running for governor, quite frankly, is I think we need to raise some revenue and dedicate $20 million a year towards substance abuse treatment facilities for these kids so that we can save our children.
Thank you so much for talking with us. We do appreciate it so much. So many stories like that, and again, we keep hearing it, we keep saying it, but this is a problem that doesn't discriminate. So you just heard from two people who are leaders in our community who are dealing with this, and people who you would look at today, Tim, and never associate them with a drug problem. But the reality is, it reaches there is no boundaries.